Welcome back to the Crossroad Diner, that place where your spirit goes when you know it's time to change direction. Hey, you made it back. We're in the back corner booth, the coaching booth at the Crossroad Diner. I'm Steve McCurdy, and this is my buddy,
John Burnett, just finishing up a croissant.
Okay. I ordered some lemon pie, but it's not here yet. Maybe they got to go make it. We're in the middle of a sequence of coaching sessions that are critical to the kind of growth path that folks who come to this podcast typically are facing. John's model for this clarity of mind is MVP, mission, vision, plan. You can't have a plan without the idea of what you're going to do. You don't know what you're going to do until you know who you are and why you want to do it. So we covered mission last week, and those exercises are still in the show notes for you to work through. But let's assume for the moment you got the mission taking place. So John, talk to us about the scope of vision and why we're going to have to use 2 sessions to get through vision.
Yes. So I love it, and I appreciate the kind of the lead in on mission, vision, plan. Mission, again, we've talked about that. Why you exist, why you're here. It's the deeper reason, the purpose for your being, your internal why. It's not a task oriented. For instance, if you're a real estate agent, your mission isn't real estate. Real estate is how you live it out. So if you think about vision, the vision is what takes your mission and gives it legs. So now, if for instance, this is a great example. My personal mission statement is to passionately inspire others to more of why they exist. I've done that in a lot of ways through my life. Right now, I'm doing it as a coach, and it's very, very hands-on. It's really close to what I would call the center of my more, living out right as close to my mission as possible. And so coaching would be a vision piece of my life right now.
Right.
What's an example when you think about your life, and you talk to a lot of people on Crossroad Diner who come to the intersection where there's a change that needs to take place. That change is really, I think that's where vision comes in. It's what is their life going to look like next? Do you have any examples of where people have come to there?
Yeah.
Maybe your own?
Thanks for teeing that up for me. I think the folks that have compelling stories on Diner, on the Thursday releases, the case studies, are people who made a major change because they did not have clarity around their mission. They were doing things that felt good, doing things that seemed to make sense, doing things that were attractive to them, but they hadn't gone through the sorting mechanism to go, why is that so important to me? And why is this part of it not working right now? They have to kind of go back and get clarity on their mission. I sometimes call it their purpose. It's the reason you get up in the morning. A lot of people are on automatic with that. They do not have a conscious awareness, and that makes it very difficult to pick your next direction. And so my job or my mission is to help people navigate the change. And you can't navigate the change unless you know where you want to go, and you can't know where you want to go unless you got a North Star that is saying, this is constant, this is truth. I judge everything with relationship to that. So I'm a navigator, and the way that I go about that right now is through this show and through coaching. And I think I can do this for the rest of my life because, with 73 years behind me of screwing things up, and knowing how you can get off track without a North Star, I think that I've got some really valuable tools for creating that clarity. And your tool is a big one. It's simple, it's clean, but vision is complex. Vision is where you start. You could go nuts on vision, and until you have some criteria for getting your arms around it, you can be wrong a lot. So there are 6 elements to this in your design. Walk us through those, and then let's really look at 3 of them.
Absolutely. So when we're anybody's done any kind of goal setting exercises, this may sound familiar to you, but when we're looking at vision, we want to focus in on the 6 key areas, I believe, of our lives. And so the first three are more internal. So that's spiritual, that is mental, and that is physical. So those are very much me oriented, personal, internal, growth oriented. And then the other three are missional. So how you live out your mission from you could call it work, vocation, that kind of space. I don't limit it to work because I believe there's volunteers. So it doesn't necessarily have to have an income tied to it. But missional is kind of our these really the last three are really our external kind of service areas. So missional, relational, and financial. And so if you think about it,
so we're gonna dig into those next time, right?
Yeah, the last three next time. But I wanted to mention just the reality that all six of those, while I kind of package them as internal and external, when you think about that, they're all whole body, right? My spiritual impacts how I relate to other people. It impacts my point of view on giving. It impacts my missional, what I'm going to do from a missional standpoint based on some spiritual stuff. So it's all full body stuff, but three of them are very much me focused, even though they impact others. The other three are more others focused, though they impact my internal being. So we're going to start with just kind of listing out and talking through a little bit the first three. Do you have any questions just kind of on that big picture?
No. And what I want to do though is what would be good for you. And I know that some of you listen to this while you're going other places, doing other things, but it's a really good idea to come back to our show notes after you listen to all this. And I think it's a good idea to not try to take notes right now. I think the best thing for you to do is be open your mind to this and look into the mirror through these lenses. Then go back to our show notes, pull up the outline and answer some of those questions for yourself. I think I'm also going to make this into some exercises. So let's go with the first three, the personal, the internal, John.
Cool. Yeah. So these first three are real internal, and the first one is spiritual. So when you are creating vision around kind of who you are spiritually, all right, it doesn't matter, honestly, if you are a God-fearing Southern Baptist, Christian, or an atheist or a Hindu. You have a spiritual side. Now, I'll tell you, I've gone through this exercise, for instance, with an atheist, and from a spiritual standpoint, they landed in an area that had to do with nature, right? That's where they felt the most spiritually connected, even though they didn't believe in a higher power or whatever. So it's not something I wanted, people go, oh, well, if you have this faith belief, no. The spiritual, think about what feeds your soul. What feeds your soul? And that's the idea of identifying vision for your spirit, the spiritual elements of your life. The next one is the mental side. Now, this is a little more straightforward, right? This is our mind. When you think about, what is building up your mind? This is something that for me personally, when I was in my 40s, maybe even late 30s, I realized I had been very close to void of any reading, any outside source. I would listen to, sadly enough, I'd listen to a lot of talk radio and political stuff. I was very politically in tune back then. And I made a personal decision that in my 35 to 50 minutes, sometimes an hour commute each way, I was not going to feed myself the negativity of news or whatever. I was either going to listen to uplifting, encouraging music, which honestly, to get there, I started listening to only instrumental. I had to get everything else out, and that was for me personally.
Right.
Or I was going to listen to something that was going to build up areas of my life. And an interesting example of that became the financial area of my life. And I listened to a lot of different podcasts, but a lot of Dave Ramsey. And so I was building up my mental state, but when I realized I was doing almost no reading, that changed as well. And I started having some goals set around reading, 6 books a year and then 12 books a year. And at some point I was reading so many books, I realized, okay, you need to back that out. Make sure your goal's not just finishing a book, but actually getting some
acting.
Building
well, moving it. moving it from vision to plan. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, that's good. So
Absolutely. And
spiritual,
so
mental.
spiritual, mental, and then the third one is physical. So when you think about it, and I you can say these are in order or not. I don't really necessarily have an order to them. I believe priorities are really interesting. They're sometimes everything's a priority, sometimes nothing's a priority. But the idea is to have these are areas of your life that you need to have
Yeah.
some focus and some vision for. The physical piece is really, you know, I have I have a relative. I'll put it that way to keep it as broad as possible. That has weighed somewhere between 350 and 400 their entire life, and they're younger than me. They're in their young 50s, and they are having major health issues. And
Yeah.
so again, sometime in my 30s and 40s, I was looking out in my future and seeing that as I was not taking care of my physical side at all. I may have some vision for it, but I didn't have a plan to see that vision come to fruition. But the physical piece is literally how you take care of your physical body. The idea for me is I changed from kind of fast and loose. I'm going to burn out instead of fade out to I still want to burn out instead of fade out, but I want to do it as a centurion. So living to be 100 is actually a goal of mine. I don't talk about it
Okay.
very much, but it is written that a couple of years ago I made that something. Okay, who knows if I'm going to get there or not? That's not the point. The point of vision
But that's
is
where
to
you're
say,
headed.
what does it look like, right? What does it look
Right.
like if I'm maxing out my life on mission? And so to reach as many people as I can, I want to be a healthy human being for as long as I can. And that really kind of, wraps up those top three. And I want to, make sure if there's any additional questions around it, we do that. But I also want to just make mention that as we cast vision in these areas, it makes sense to ask, why is that? Why do I have vision around it? So for instance, for the physical piece, so it's an easy one for me because I've thought them all through. This is one I've really thought through. I have grandkids from my oldest son, and there's 3 of them, and they're done. I have 3 additional sons. One of them has a teenage child that he's adopted that I have very little interaction because they live in Central America and it's an adopted son. The younger 2 haven't been married yet. So I've got more grandkids coming, but I ain't getting any younger. So part of my reason for physical fitness, I want to be here. And while 2 weeks ago I'm over at family night at my oldest son's house, and my grandkids dragged me onto the trampoline, and for an hour I'm jumping on the trampoline, wrestling with them because I can do that at 58. I'm in good enough physical health to do that.
Yeah.
I've got grandkids, I believe, coming down the road, and I want to be able to do that with them too. So I can't stop now. I've got to keep going. So I've got a why behind that. Whenever I'm in my nomad lifestyle, traveling a lot, seeing a lot of people, I want to be healthy enough to enjoy other worlds as I go and experience other cultures and other peoples. I want to be able to walk the steps of wherever it is. I've never been to India,
Pizza, whatever. Yeah.
yeah, right. So anyway, so kind of maybe, I want to make sure if you have any questions, if there's any thoughts that you want to pull out, definitely do that. But, kind of making sure as we head into this and kind of out of the first 3, that there's a why behind it. So as we lean into the spiritual, like, why is that? Why do you have that vision? And let me throw it back to you just to make sure, because I've been talking for a while, and then I've got one last thought I might end on.
Okay. Well, in Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl talks about the people that were in a concentration camp in Germany in World War II, and many died every day, and some lived. And it wasn't really a health thing. There were some very, very sick people who lived. There were some pretty healthy people that died. So he determined that the determination of whether they lived or died was whether or not they had a reason to live. If they internally had a reason, they lived. If not, they died before their time. And this is the same thing that we're talking about with this motivation structure, is that if you know your why and you have these thoughts in your mind in these categories and these dimensions of who it is that you are, you have clarity. It's much easier to make every kind of decision. And also you're attracting ideas to you that are in those channels. So spiritual, mental, and physical, those three are the first kind of half of the part of vision that's getting ready to execute the life that mission points to. And they are flexible and can change, but this is where you start, and this is where you review it. How often do you review that list for you?
Well, that's a really good point, because I review at least once a year, usually going sometime at the end of the year as I'm getting ready to go into the new year. I will tell you that from a personal standpoint, something I started doing, actually it was within the last couple of years, is every morning, part of my morning, what I call my morning practice, is I physically write my mission statement to passionately inspire others to more. I physically write vision that I have for me. I do that in words. So I've kind of put clear identities against each of my vision statements. Vision changes, by the way. We talked about, we're both coaches. The idea of being a coach 20 years ago, to be a coach, you were doing something in athletics. That's what a coach was. Now there's life coach and diet coaches and all kinds of different coaches and all different kind of executive coaches and managerial coaches, and it's a whole
podcast coaches.
There you go. And so you have all these different things that didn't exist. So vision changes as you go through life. Your mission is consistent. It's why you exist. Vision changes. So at one point, my vision was to move through the ranks of a sports marketing career, which I did. And then that changed. I wanted to exit that and live more for my dreams versus the company I worked for dreams, and started casting vision that looked very specific to John Burnett. Again, it's kind of I like to look at life as a continual move towards the center of your more. And your more is where you're living as much as possible in these areas of your life on mission. So whenever it's when you and I've talked about this, when we have a coaching client that we speak to, and when we hang up or say goodbye, they are like lit up and on fire, moving towards their more. It's like, it lights me up. Whenever I speak, when I walk off the stage and I know that it was a home run, that feeds the sweet spot of my soul. And I know that I'm living very close to the center of my more. And so vision changes. Hopefully get closer and closer to the center of our more. That's why we love to reach out and hopefully get a hold of, college kids and younger adults, so they can get on that pathway sooner than later. But, I talked about identity. Why don't we wrap? And after we finish the next three in our next session, we'll kind of go back in and be more specific around some identities that I've used in these areas of my life, and maybe talk about some that you have or will, look at for your life that are very vision casting. Does that sound good?
Sounds great. So your assignment is, if you want to, start putting these ideas in concrete, and not that they're going to be inflexible, but that you have to have a starting point. Download the exercise from the show notes, either from the audio or from the video cast, and do that exercise yourself. And we'll be with you next week, back in the back corner, in the coaching corner of the Crossroad Diner, to look at the second part of casting your vision. For John, this is Steve. We'll see you next time on the Crossroad Diner. We hope you've enjoyed today's episode of the Crossroad Diner. We'll come to you each week with Monday releases of Crossroad Diner coaching and Thursday releases of Crossroad Diner case studies of people from all walks of life who have learned to manage the change of their direction with the help of the Crossroad Diner. See you next week.